What the hell is a blade? Blades are a design system that I originally came up with in order to deal with the issues on Gleba, but have since been adapted to many other planets and are perhaps best exemplified now by my Volcanus and Aquilo systems. You could consider this to be a subset of bus design if you really wanted to, but at this point I consider it to be different enough and separate enough in how things are structured that I consider it to be its own thing. So, what is a blade? Each one of these are blades right here. Now, we have 3 blades of cryogenic science right now, and the whole idea behind a blade, and I'll go ahead and put the night vision goggles on so we can actually see what's going on here, is that at the base or main artery or main bus or axis, as you would call it, is consisting of only the most basic ingredients. Like on a kilo, we have lithium brine, fluoroketone, and oil as the 3 things that are on the fluid bus. Everything else that's needed for cryogenic is incorporated into the blade itself. It usually comes in 2 parts. These are mainly used for science, although I do have other kinds of blades that we'll be looking at in a bit here, where everything that's needed to be made is completely self-contained, including on a kilo here, the whole ammonia versus ice balance and needing to burn off the extra over here. That's all completely self-contained and integrated. In order to expand this, it's very easy. All I have to do is take one of these and copy it over, and then make sure these 3 pipes are fed adequately enough, which is easy enough to do because the lithium brine comes straight in from the lithium pump. We're actually still operating, not you, over here. We're still only operating on a handful of lithiums thanks to the ridiculous amount of prod that we have here, combined with legendary pump jacks. And same thing here down with the oil and the fluoroketone. Is actually only ever been running off 1 pump this entire time. I started setting up to go to the other ones up here and just never needed to. This was at 84% at 470 hours. We're at like 650 hours, and well, we're still at 84%, so yeah, that just seems to be lasting forever. But the core idea is that you put only the most basic materials, ideally in pipes. In fact, I think the only way it really truly qualifies for blade design is if it's either pipes or fruits, because those are the only things dense enough to really do something like this. With a bus design, you have to keep expanding. In fact, let's take a look over here at, if I can find it, this is the same save file you're looking at, just several months older at this point. And this will show what I had originally on Novice, my original bus. This is a bus. So with a bus, you've got, a whole bunch of different materials on belts. You're adding intermediaries from belts. You may be subtracting them the way we add gears on. And then once it gets past all the things it needs gears for, it gets to the last thing it needs gears for, which is steam turbines. And then after that, they get removed. But you basically got, large amounts of copper, iron, and so on, as well as your circuits, all on the bus together. The whole idea with the blade design is that you're not expanding or shrinking it at all. Like the way this starts small and then gets bigger and bigger until it finally kind of hits its final width and just keeps going. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen with blades. You have a constant width. You pick your basic ingredients that are located on the blade, and that's what takes... that it stays at those 4 ingredients, however many you choose, throughout the entire length. None of my blades right now have more than 3 ingredients on them. If we look at each planet, as I said, on Aquilo we have lithium, fluoroketone, and oil. On Volcanus we have iron, copper, and sulfuric acid. We have some pretty tall blades on this planet now, because we recently refactored red and green over here. And nothing else. We have no circuits, nothing. Everything is self-contained, which makes this very, very easy to expand and just add another one and scale things up very easily. On Fulgora, we've essentially got the same idea with our electromagnetic ones over here. These are a little different because there's a lot more coming in from bots. There is some stuff coming in from bots on Aquilo, but that's just kind of necessary because Aquilo is an import planet. For example, the holmium required for the lithium always needs to be brought in like that. But the main stuff, the main ingredients, are ideally on fluids over here. Novice is a little bit different. These are not quite blades in the same sense because we've got the circuits separated and coming from the outside. These are still vertically integrated sections in the sense that we've got everything together. We're not going to trains or anything, but they're not true blades in the same sense. We've actually been calling some of the larger blades broadswords or claymores, especially the Kilo ones and the Volcanus ones, which have become quite wide at this point. And then we've got Gleba, where the system was originally invented. And fruits are a bit different because fruits are very dense compared to, say, copper and iron. You will eventually need to keep expanding it like a bus. It's not like a pipe where you can really abuse Fluid 2.0 and push an absolutely massive amount of fluid into the pipe. It's like what we have got going over here. We've got all of these just putting a huge amount of copper and iron into these pipes, and then by staying underneath the pipeline extent, we don't have to worry about adding large sections of pumps like we do when we normally have to extend pipes, such as what's going on here with this long distance iron I'm sending from here over to the blue. So the idea is that everything is completely self-contained. Like over here, we've got the Gleba ones. The name originally originated when I was designing Gleba modules to handle everything. Like right here, you've got the bioflux blade and a carbon fiber blade as well. And when you put them all side by side, with the main supply bus having a static width and all the modules, just stacking end on end, they kind of wound up looking a little bit like fan blades or turbine blades. And so that's where the name originated. But the idea essentially, when you talk about blade design, when you say that this is a blade, what you mean is that you're having only the basic ingredients coming on the outside, and then all the processing is completely integrated together. Any management, any overflow, or anything. Like you obviously you can have bots handling some things. Like here we have bots handling seeds and spoilage, which doesn't take very many. Only about 500 bots are needed to keep this going, and we're at about 1.2 million SPM right now, and that's all that's needed in order to manage that. The majority is put on belts, kept as short length as possible, and using direct insert as much as possible is another key component of this design philosophy. This is a really powerful way of designing things and has sort of become my default way of designing things when I'm looking to design a new science module or something like that. It's very, very easy to expand and very just hands off and headache free. Because once you've designed your core blade that balances itself and handles everything, all you have to do is stamp down more and then make sure the main pipes are being adequately fed. A quick note on materials, which I almost forgot to mention. On Volcanus, we use liquid copper, liquid iron, liquid sulfur. On Novice, we essentially have those same three liquids. Ignore the oil pipe. That's just going from the eastern oil field to my refinery up here. It's not actually part of the fluid bus. And on Fulgora, the liquids we chose were, again, sulfuric acid. Tends to be a common choice. Liquid holmium and heavy oil. I originally had holmium integrated into these, but the amount that's needed is quite high, and I realized that it would be a lot less headache if I completely separated the holmium entirely and worried about only these three liquids coming through here. In Fulgora, we've obviously got a lot more things coming in with bots, which come from these train stations here. I'm not going to go too in depth into the specific blades that I have right now on each planet because I'm going to be making a planet-specific video where I do that probably within the next couple weeks here once we get our SPM completely stabilized at over 1 million, which should be pretty soon. but I'm just trying to show you the overall concept of how it's done and how they are executed. Designs such as the orange science I have up here are not, again, really true blades in the sense they're still vertically integrated modules with some really nice direct insert that we've got here. Almost everything on here is direct insert. In fact, we have no belts of actual materials coming or intermediaries coming in. We just have the belts of the raw materials coming in. But the fact that this essentially is being side loaded here because of the sheer amount of tungsten that it requires kind of makes it a little different from a blade design per se, because I can't just take this and expand it off this any further. Like one patch kind of feeds two of these modules, and that's that. Same thing with the yellow design here. This, you know, a bit closer. Like you, this is essentially this is closer to a blade than the orange science is. I mean, I've basically been referring to the yellow one as blades as well, because we've got the liquid metal coming in the bottom, and just the calcite as well, which is one of those substances where it a little bit goes a long way, and the coal, and it comes in. So it's not completely liquid the way the others are. It's sort of, you know, a rusty blade or something, if you will, but the concept is the same being used here throughout all my science modules, is that we bring in only the raw ingredients and we make the science from there, load it directly into rockets, and launch it from there. Stuff such as what I've got going over here on gray science and purple science on novice are not blades. These are just vertically, I've been calling them vertically integrated setups. I need something a little shorter and more to the point, such as blade. But yeah, these are not blades because you can't like easily expand them, you know, side by side the same way I could expand the red and green on Volcanus over here, or the cryogenic on Aquilo, or the electromagnetic on Fulgora, where I can just keep pushing it further out. So there's you know, a bit of overlap between the true blades and the imposter blades, but this kind of completely integrated setup where you only focus on the basics and then don't train or ship around intermediates has pretty much become a core staple of my 2.0 design philosophy, and I think it works really well, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. Even when I start a new run, I don't see myself changing these systems drastically. I will be iterating on them and improving them, but changing them, no. I think this is a very, very solid way of designing things in 2.0. It's also very UPS efficient. So you notice we're still at 60 UPS, even though we're cruising at 1.2 million SPM here, and we can definitely get much higher. You know, the whole conversation about Prometheum ships and their UPS notwithstanding. So that's the whole idea. Those are the whole. That's the whole idea of how these blades work. They are easily expanded, self-contained, self-regulating, and only require the absolute basics coming out here. You know, and Gleba will eventually have to add more fruit belts, but so it's again a little bit of an imposter maybe if you want, but the idea is that you're starting with only a very dense basic product. You know, copper and iron plates are not dense. Fruit is dense. Fruit is the only thing that I feel really still qualifies for a blade, aside from just using liquids. So, last thing about this, where it works well and where it doesn't. So it works well on a kilo, clearly, you know, oil, like these three liquid choices were really on point and made things very straightforward here. So it works well on a kilo. It works reasonably well on Fulgora. You know, notwithstanding that due to the nature of Fulgora, you've got a lot more bots coming in with materials and whatnot. It works well on Gleba because you've only got the two kinds of fruits, and it works well on Volcanus for things that, you know, just require copper, iron, and sulfur. Where it doesn't work well are things that require large amounts of solids that can't be liquefied. Things that take large amounts of stone, large amounts of plastic, large amounts of coal. That's where it doesn't work as well, and you have to do more of what we did up here with just simply designing a vertically integrated setup that corresponds to a certain patch, takes the whole patch, and then makes as much as we can here. It's part of the reason why purple and gray are still on novice. Although I have been considering moving purple to Volcanus, but that's again a whole nother conversation. But over here we just tap the entire stone patch. That tends to be the main limiter, is the surface area of these stone patches, and then pump it all into purple science and have it going from there. And then those get trained back to base. Here we only have the calcite coming in by train and science going out. No intermediates are shipped by train on novice at all. These are the trains I have right now. I have 19 trains, just a couple copper iron, one calcite, and then about half a dozen of each science train right over there. We've do have plastic on this one coming all the way from over here because unfortunately we did not have a coal patch nearby. This was one downside of trying to do this on patch stuff on novice, is that you're kind of limited by what patches are nearby, and that's something that can be a bit of a pain once you're expanding. And you have stuff like this where it's like, oh, I could do like red or green here, but there's nothing else really nearby. We've got coal way over here, we could maybe belt over, but you're trying to avoid belting things across the map, although that's been something that's been happening a bit more and more as things have gone on. As you can see on the orange signs, we've got the coal being belted all the way from over here at this point. But if we understand how belts are calculated correctly, a fully compressed belt is essentially treated as one unit and should not be that bad for UPS, although it's not something I have experimented heavily with in the sandbox. So yeah, it doesn't work well for things that require coal, stone, or lots of other solids, but where it does, where you can stick with just the basic fluids and then build off that, it works extremely well. And it also looks very nice and clean and is very easy to expand. So I will be talking a lot more about these specific blades once I make the planet specific videos. I will be going in depth into each specific one, how I designed each one and what I learned in the process of designing those, and also discussing the failed designs that I had which didn't work out in that regard. But yeah, this video is just trying to fully explain the concept of it, where it is beneficial, and why it's become my default method of building science and other modules. And I guess the last thing I should go over is, the other blades. We have a holmium, or not holmium, sorry, superconductor blade over here. I stuck holmium rockets over here. It's not really a true blade. It's just a couple silos because, I just needed it to tap off the holmium here, and that's it for launching those into space. Gleba, as we saw, had bioflux and carbon fiber. Volcanus has, I believe, only science right now. There's nothing else on there that would qualify for blade design at this point. And that should more or less cover everything. One last thing. When doing something like this, when trying to design which things other than science should be going into a blade and be directly loaded into silos like this, it's basically anything with a high volume. Just look at how many rocket launches you're doing for each things, and anything where you're launching a very large amount of it probably wants to be preloaded. Preloading is something I've discussed a bit in other videos, but I guess I'll go over it one more time real quick here. If you are preloading stuff into a silo with an inserter, then the rockets will fire off every time they're ready. Like over here, if you look at Volcanus, once the rocket launches, as soon as it clears the silo, the rocket inventory can start being loaded again with the next batch. And even though the rocket is not fully emerged yet, it's already been loaded, which means the second it's finished preparing, it will immediately launch with no delay. Well, okay, right now it's not launching because the ship is full. But so, that was a bad example. But you get the idea. Yeah, that was the last load for the ship, so now it's stopped. But yeah, it will launch. It will chain launch with no delay if you have it going back to back. Here we can try to get a better illustration here. Yeah, this one is still loading right now. So if we look at this, we see our cryogenic being loaded up while the rocket is still preparing. It takes 26.7, 26.8, something like that seconds for a rocket to emerge. You can see as soon as it's out, immediately launch with no delay. If you don't do this and you were loading your rockets with bots using generic silos, then what happens is the rocket has to fully emerge before it even sends the request to be loaded, and then the bots have to go grab the items and bring it over, leading to a much longer time, easily 40 or more seconds in between launches, depending on how far the bots have to travel from the chest to the silos. We still have some generic silos on every planet. Here's a kilos, Glebas are in the middle here, and so on. Volcanuses are these. Why I have so many is a whole other story. And Fulgora over here. So we still have some generic silos to handle all the miscellaneous launches, but things with very high volume, which science, always qualifies for that, you want to directly preload in the rockets. It will save you time, UPS, everything. It's, I would go as far as to say is it's mandatory, and anybody not preloading their high volume stuff really should start. This isn't... There's no debate to be had here. This is objectively better for things that are moved in very high quantities. So there you go. There you have it. There's our little blade design overview. And we'll be going a lot more in depth into these specific blades in future videos, which I should have out within a couple weeks. Hope this helps you guys out, inspires you to design things a little bit differently. My name is Stupid Fat Hobbit. I stream at Twitch TV, SF Hobbit, and thanks for watching.